All right, today we're diving headfirst into a real diplomatic firestorm. So imagine this. The leaders of the US and Russia are getting ready to meet, and they might just hammer out a deal to end the war in Ukraine. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, Ukraine and its allies in Europe are getting seriously worried they're about to be completely cut out of the conversation, that a deal could be forced on them from the outside. And this fear, it actually has a name, and it's a ghost from Europe's not-so-distant past.
This quote right here is what sent shockwaves through capitals all across Europe. Senior officials are bringing up Yalta, and believe me, that is not a word they use lightly. For them, it brings up this specter of a time when the great powers just decided the fate of smaller nations without even asking them, and they are terrified that history is about to repeat itself.
So for anyone who's not up on their post-World War II history, the Yalta Conference is basically where the Allied leaders got together and carved up Europe. They drew lines on a map that pretty much set the stage for the entire Cold War. For a lot of countries, especially in Eastern Europe, it's a symbol of losing their sovereignty in some backroom deal. So when you hear an official say the days of Yalta are long gone, you got to understand that's not really a statement of fact. It's a warning, a desperate one.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Who are the actual players in this high-stakes drama? And what exactly is this proposal that has everyone so alarmed? Let's break it down.
And right here, you can see the fundamental problem, right? Everybody's goals are in direct conflict. You've got the Trump administration, which is reportedly gunning for a rapid solution. Then you have President Putin, who wants a deal that basically rubber stamps his territorial gains. Meanwhile, President Zelensky is, of course, fighting for a just peace that respects Ukraine's internationally recognized borders. And the European leaders? They're just trying to shout from the sidelines, insisting that they, and especially Ukraine, have to be part of the conversation.
So, what kicked off this whole diplomatic scramble? Well, this wasn't just some rumor floating around. No, it was a specific proposal that came directly from Vladimir Putin, and it was then relayed to European leaders by President Trump himself. It was the actual details of that proposal that set off every single alarm bell from Paris to Berlin to Kyiv.
And this is where you see just how massive the gap is between the two sides. I mean, it is huge. The Russian proposal, reportedly, is for a ceasefire, but only after a deal is struck that gives them the entire Donbas region, and that includes territory they don't even control right now. Ukraine's position? It couldn't be more different. For them, a ceasefire has to come first, period. And there will be absolutely no deals that sign away their sovereign territory. You can see there's almost zero common ground here to even start a real conversation.
So, facing this nightmare scenario of a deal being made completely over their heads, European nations did something they're not always famous for. They moved fast, and they acted together. Their response was swift, and it was unified.
Listen to what French President Macron is saying here. He's making 2 points crystal clear. First, the non-negotiable principle: nothing about Ukraine without the Ukrainians. Simple as that. And second, a very direct message to Washington. European security is on the line here, so you better believe Europe demands a seat at that table.
And if you really want to feel the fear coming from nations that actually border Russia, this quote from Estonia's foreign minister, wow, it says everything. For countries like the Baltic states, this isn't some abstract political debate, it's existential. They believe that if you reward aggression by letting borders be redrawn by force, then no one's borders are safe.
Okay, so all of this frantic back-and-forth diplomacy, it isn't happening in a vacuum. It's all barreling towards a critical summit. And believe me, the clock is ticking. So what does the immediate timeline look like?
Just look at how fast all of this is unfolding. I mean, it's enough to give you whiplash. Just last week, the proposal gets floated in Moscow. Then boom, by Wednesday, Europe is officially alarmed. By Saturday, they're scrambling to hold a strategy meeting outside London to get on the same page. And now all eyes are on that summit in Alaska next week. This is what high-stakes diplomacy moving at lightning speed looks like.
All of this leads to a summit that is just clouded by these huge unanswered questions. Will Ukraine even get a seat at the table? It's something Russia has rejected so far. What happens to the occupied southern regions? Can Europe's new united front actually change the U.S. approach? And maybe the biggest question of all, will an agreement, any agreement, be forced upon Kyiv against its will?
Ultimately, when you boil it all down, this is the core conflict. It's a clash between the raw desire for a fast, decisive end to the war and the fundamental principles of national sovereignty and international law.
The real fear here is that in the rush for a solution, a deal gets made that sacrifices Ukraine's future for what would be a very fragile and very unjust peace.
And so we're left with this one essential question, the very same one that leaders in Europe and Ukraine are wrestling with at this very moment. If a nation's borders can be redrawn by outside powers, what does sovereignty even mean anymore? That is the fundamental principle that's on the line. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.